The sea did not welcome them. It never had, not truly, not unless you were born to it and learned its moods like a lover's. To Jon Snow it felt like riding the back of an angry beast that wanted him thrown into its black mouth. Wind tore at the ship's sails until canvas snapped like whips. The mast groaned and the deck pitched beneath Jon's boots, wet with slick with spray. Men shouted and cursed in voices swallowed by the storm. Davos Seaworth moved through it with a brutal calm, hands sure on rope, eyes narrowed against sleet. He looked younger here, in the wind's teeth, as if the sea had reached into him and pulled up the man he had been before kings and fires and dead girls' screams. Jon held the rail with both hands. The cold water that lashed his fingers should have made him flinch. Instead it slid over his skin and melted, warmed by something he could not turn off. The heat under his ribs shifted with the ship's motion. Steady, stubborn, as if it refused to be drowned. "Ease her into it," Davos barked, and the sailors obeyed without questioning, because in storms men followed the loudest certainty. Ahead, through a rip in the cloud, Dragonstone rose, not as a castle so much as a wound in the world. Black cliffs cut up from the sea at angles too harsh to be natural, and towers carved from volcanic rock jutted like broken teeth. The bridge, stone arches spanning a gap between sea stacks, seemed less built than grown, as if the island had decided to shape itself into a fortress. Even from a distance Jon could see the faint red glow along the rock's belly. Heat trapped in stone the way anger trapped in a man's chest could glow for years without dying. A gust hit hard enough to force Jon to bend into it. The ship rolled, and for an instant the horizon tilted so wildly, he felt the world might slide off its axis. Then it steadied, and the fortress loomed closer, darker, heavier. Jon felt it before he saw it. A pressure in the air, like the moment before lightning strikes. Not cold like the dead. Hot, living. His scars tingled beneath his leathers. A shadow moved above Dragonstone's highest tower, vast and slow. For a heartbeat it crossed the low clouds, wings beating with the lazy authority of something that had never feared falling. Jon's breath caught. The heat in his chest surged toward it like a tide reaching for the moon. Davos saw the shadow too. He went very still, fingers tightening on rope. "There," he said hoarsely. "7 bloody hells." The shadow vanished into cloud, leaving only the storm's roar and the fortress silhouette. But the sense of being watched remained, prickling along Jon's skin. Not the watchfulness of men on walls. Something older. Something that measured with hunger rather than suspicion. The ship fought its way around the island's jagged edge, into a narrow approach where the waves slammed against black rock and exploded into white foam. Lanterns burned on the distant docks like small, steady stars, a mockery of warmth in a world of wet cold. Jon's mind drifted back to Winterfell for a moment. Sansa's face hard as ice when she told him to come back, the hall kneeling, the crown made of desperate mouths. He could almost hear the north behind him, demanding he be both sword and shield and hearth. Now he was here, sailing into the mouth of fire. The ship finally slipped into calmer water beneath the cliff's shadow. Men heaved and swore and lowered sails, the storm's grip loosening as if Dragonstone's stone walls repelled the wind by sheer contempt. Jon released the rail slowly and realized his hands had left dark, wet marks on the wood where the spray had warmed. Steam rose faintly, then vanished. Davos approached him, face-lined, eyes sharp. "Remember," he shouted over the last of the wind, "you don't threaten dragons. You don't stare at dragons. You don't." "I know," Jon said, though he didn't. Not really. He had fought men and dead things and his own ghosts. He had never stood before something that could turn armies into ash with a single breath. The ship bumped the dock with a heavy thud. Ropes were thrown. Knots tightened. The gangplank went down. Jon looked up at the fortress carved from black rock and felt the fire in his chest tighten like a fist. He had come for Dragonglass. But some part of him had come because the world's fire had called to his. The dock smelled of salt and sulfur. Black sand clung to Jon's boots like ash, and the stone beneath it was slick with sea spray, dark and gleaming. Torches burned in iron brackets along the dock's edge, their flames steady despite the wind. Fed by oil and sheltered by walls carved with dragon heads that jutted outward, mouths open in silent snarls. Dragonstone did not merely display dragons. It worshipped their shape in stone. A line of soldiers waited at the end of the dock. They were not northern men. They did not shift and mutter and rest hands on sword hilts like nervous farmers pretending to be warriors. They stood perfectly still, spears upright, shields aligned, bronze helmets catching torchlight. Their faces were hard and unreadable, their silence heavier than any shout. Unsullied, Jon had heard stories, slave soldiers trained until pain meant nothing. Seeing them made those stories feel small. At the front stood a tall man with dark skin and eyes like sharpened stone. He held himself like a drawn bow, Grey Worm if the southern tales were true. His hand rested near his spear shaft, but not in fear, in readiness. Beside him stood a young woman, small and composed, her posture calm in a way that did not come from arrogance but from certainty. Missandei of Noth. Jon recognized her too, not from seeing her but from how men spoke of her. The queen's voice made gentle. Davos stepped ahead first, hands open, the posture of a man who had learned that approaching kings and queens was like approaching wild animals. "We come under peace," he called. "From the north." Grey Worm's gaze flicked over them, cold and assessing. "Names," he said, his voice measured, his common tongue accented but clear.
"Ser Davos Seabord, Davos answered."
"And Jon Snow." The name landed in the damp air like a stone dropped in still water. Missandei's eyes sharpened with interest. Grey Worm's expression did not change, but Jon saw the slightest tightening around his jaw. The Unsullied did not move, yet something shifted in their line, attention focusing. "Jon Snow," Missandei repeated softly, as if tasting the syllables. "The king in the north." Jon's stomach tightened. He had expected the title to travel faster than ships. Still, hearing it spoken here, under dragon-carved stone before foreign soldiers, made it feel heavier, like a chain dropped across his shoulders. "I'm here to speak with Daenerys Targaryen," Jon said. He kept his voice steady. He refused to soften it into a plea. "About the dead." Grey Worm's eyes did not blink. "Our queen does not meet strangers," he said flatly. Davos shifted beside Jon. "Strangers?" he scoffed, then caught himself and forced the edge from his voice. "We sailed through a storm to get here. The matter is urgent," Missandei finished, gaze on Jon. "So you said." Jon felt heat stir under his ribs, the familiar coil tightening. The torches along the dock seemed to flare slightly, as if leaning toward him. He forced his hands to remain at his sides, fingers unclenching slowly. Missandei watched him, and Jon had the unpleasant sense she noticed more than she said. Grey Worm lifted a hand. The Unsullied spears tilted a fraction, not pointing, but making the message clear. One step wrong, and the line becomes a wall of iron. "You will come," Grey Worm said. "You will give up weapons." Davos opened his mouth, indignant. Jon spoke first.
"No."
The word hit like a slap. Grey Worm's gaze hardened. "Then you will not enter." Jon held his eyes. He could feel the fire in his chest respond to the defiance, eager, as if it liked being challenged. He forced it down. He did not come to fight Unsullied on a dock. He came to keep the North alive. "I'll keep my sword," Jon said, voice low. "I will not draw it unless attacked." Grey Worm's jaw tightened. He looked at Missandei. Missandei studied Jon for a heartbeat longer, then nodded slightly. "The queen will decide," she said. Grey Worm exhaled through his nose, displeased, but signaled. Two Unsullied stepped forward, spears still upright, to flank Jon and Davos. "You will follow," Grey Worm said. "No sudden movement." Davos muttered under his breath. "No sudden movement, bloody hells." But he obeyed, because Davos understood living to speak again mattered more than pride. They walked off the dock and onto a causeway carved directly into black stone. The rock rose around them, slick and sharp-edged, the air warmer the higher they climbed. Sulfur stung Jon's nose. The heat under his ribs answered it, steady and strange, like a familiar hand reaching from inside the mountain. Dragonstone's walls loomed above, carved with dragons mid-flight, teeth bared, wings spread. Faces of stone beasts watched them pass. Jon felt, beneath the stink of sulfur and sea, something else. A living heat that pressed back. And somewhere high above, hidden in cloud, a wing beat rolled through the air like distant thunder. They found Tyrion Lannister at the gate, and Jon's world tilted in a way no storm could match. He stood beneath the carved dragon jaws that formed Dragonstone's entrance, small against the massive stone, yet somehow in command of the space anyway. His hands were clasped behind his back, posture relaxed, as if he had been waiting for them like a host at a feast, rather than a lion in exile guarding a queen of fire. Tyrion's eyes flicked over Jon with quick intelligence. He did not stare at Jon's cloak or sword first. He stared at Jon's face, as if measuring what death had left behind. "Jon Snow," Tyrion said, voice dry. "Or should I say your grace?" Jon's jaw tightened. "Don't," he said. Tyrion smiled faintly. "Fair enough." His gaze slid to Davos. "And the Onion Knight. Westeros grows stranger by the day." Davos bristled, then managed something like a polite nod. "We didn't come to exchange clever words." "No," Tyrion agreed. "You came for Dragonglass." He said it as if it were obvious, as if he had been expecting that request since the moment the Raven left Winterfell. Jon's eyes narrowed. "How do you know?" Tyrion's smile widened a fraction, almost amused. "Because everyone who sails into a storm to reach a queen with dragons wants something badly enough to risk being turned into cinders." His eyes sharpened. "And because I've spoken with a man named Samwell Tarly." The name hit Jon like a fist. "Sam is here?" he demanded. Tyrion lifted a hand in a calming gesture. "Not here as in on this island," he said. "Here as in the chain of events. He sent word. He has a talent for making desperate men do sensible things." Davos let out a rough exhale, half relief, half frustration. "Then you know why we're here." "I do," Tyrion said. "And I know what you'll say." His gaze returned to Jon, thoughtful. "You'll say the dead are coming. You'll say the North can't stand alone. You'll ask for Dragonglass and perhaps men." He paused, letting the words settle. "And my queen will ask you for something in return." Jon felt the answer before Tyrion said it. The fire in his chest tightened, hot and defensive. "She'll want me to kneel," Jon said. Tyrion's expression did not change, but his eyes softened slightly, as if he understood the weight behind that refusal. "Yes," he said quietly. "She will." Davos's mouth twisted. "And if he doesn't?" Tyrion glanced toward the massive doors behind him. From within, faint warmth spilled out, carrying the smell of smoke and stone. "Then the conversation will be difficult." Jon stepped closer, boots scraping wet stone. "Tell her this," he said. "I didn't cross a storm to argue about titles. I came because the world is ending." Tyrion held Jon's gaze. "You'll have to make her believe it," he said. "Queens don't like being told their war is not the most important one." Missandei watched them quietly, her expression unreadable. Grey Worm remained rigid, as if listening without allowing himself to be moved. Jon's mind flickered back to Winterfell's hall, the kneeling, the torches flaring toward him like approval. He remembered telling them they knelt to the fight for the living. He remembered Sansa's face when she said, "Come back," as if the words were a hook she had sunk into his ribs. "I'll make her believe it," Jon said, and he heard the steadiness in his own voice. "If she'll listen." Tyrion's smile was thin. "Listening is not always her strongest habit," he admitted. "But she is not foolish. And she has seen enough death to understand threats, even if they come in unfamiliar shapes." A distant roar rolled through the stone beneath their feet. Faint, more felt than heard. The Unsullied did not flinch. Missandei's gaze lifted slightly as if she recognized the sound like a familiar voice. Jon's scars warmed. His breath came out in a thin stream of smoke. Tyrion noticed. His eyes flicked to Jon's mouth, then back to Jon's eyes. For the first time, his humor faltered. "Well," he murmured, almost to himself, "that part of the rumors might be true." Jon kept his face still. He did not know what Tyrion saw in him, but he knew Tyrion was not a man who missed details. Tyrion turned slightly toward the doors. "Come," he said. "If you're going to refuse a queen, do it with good posture." The great doors of Dragonstone opened, and warm air breathed out like the sigh of a sleeping furnace. Jon stepped forward into the mouth of the dragon-carved gate, feeling the mountain's heat press against his skin like recognition. He had faced death. Now he would face fire that wore a crown. Dragonstone's hall was not Winterfell's. Winterfell's great hall had been built for men who lived with winter and needed warmth. Dragonstone's was built for something else, something older and more arrogant. The stone was black and glossy, carved into ridges and curves like scales. Torches burned in brackets shaped like claws, their flames throwing restless light across walls that seemed to swallow heat rather than reflect it. The air smelled of smoke and salt and a sharp mineral tang that made Jon's tongue feel dry. At the far end of the hall, atop a set of broad steps, sat Daenerys Targaryen. She was smaller than the stories made her, more woman than myth, but the room bent around her anyway. Her silver hair was braided back, intricate and controlled. Her eyes were dark and steady, watching Jon as if he were a strange animal brought into her court. She wore black and red, the colors stark against pale skin. The stone throne beneath her looked carved from the mountain itself, hard, severe, nothing like the Iron Throne's twisted vanity, but no less a claim. Tyrion stood to one side, hands folded, expression careful. Missandei stood near the steps, calm and poised. Grey Worm stood like a statue at the base of the dais, spear upright. Unsullied lined the hall's sides, silent as grave markers. Jon stopped at the hall's center. Water dripped from his cloak to the stone floor. The droplets steamed faintly when they hit, warmed by the heat in him. He pretended not to notice. Daenerys did not speak at once. She stared at Jon, and Jon held her gaze because lowering his eyes felt like surrender. At last she said, "Jon Snow." Her voice was calm, but there was steel under it. "King in the north." Jon's jaw tightened. "Daenerys Targaryen," he answered. "Queen." A flicker of amusement crossed Tyrion's face, quickly smoothed away. Daenerys's eyes narrowed slightly, as if weighing whether Jon's choice of title was a courtesy or a challenge. "You sailed into a storm to stand in my hall," she said. "That makes you either brave or foolish." "Both?" Davos muttered before he could stop himself. Grey Worm's gaze snapped to Davos, sharp. Daenerys's eyes slid to the Onion Knight. "And you are?" she asked. Davos bowed awkwardly. "Ser Davos Seaworth," he said. "Former hand to Stannis Baratheon. Former smuggler. Current concerned man." Daenerys studied him for a heartbeat, then looked back to Jon. "And you," she said softly, "are the man who died." The words struck the hall like a thrown knife. Jon felt the Unsullied's attention sharpen. He felt Missandei's gaze intensify. He felt Tyrion's eyes flick to him like a scholar waiting for proof. Jon did not deny it. "I was killed," he said. His voice came out rough but steady. "I came back." Daenerys's expression did not change. But Jon saw something in her eyes, recognition perhaps. She had walked into fire and returned with dragons. She knew what it was to be a rumor that turned out to be true. "And now you come to me," Daenerys said, "because you want something." Jon exhaled slowly. The air left his mouth as a thin stream of smoke, barely visible. He did not know if she noticed. "We need Dragonglass," Jon said, "for the war against the dead." A murmur rippled through the hall, quiet, skeptical. Daenerys's eyes narrowed. "The dead," she repeated. "I have heard northern tales. White Walkers, Whites, Stories told to frighten children into obedience. They aren't stories, Jon said, and the bluntness surprised him. He forced his voice softer, not pleading, but measured. I've fought them. I've watched men rise after death with blue eyes. If you don't believe me, ask Tyrion Lannister. Ask Samwell Tarly. Ask anyone who has seen Hardhome's survivors. Tyrion shifted slightly, as if feeling every gaze turn toward him. The Night's Watch has records, he said carefully, and the reports from the north are consistent. Daenerys' eyes flicked to Tyrion, then back to Jon. You want my Dragonglass, she said. You want my resources, perhaps my armies. Her lips tightened faintly. And what do you offer me? Jon felt the question like a blade at his throat. He knew the answer she wanted. He could almost hear it in the way the hall held its breath. Davos shifted beside Jon, jaw tight. I offer you the truth, Jon said. I offer you an enemy that will take your throne and your dragons and your name if you let it. He paused, forcing himself to say what he hated. And I offer you an alliance. Daenerys' gaze sharpened. Alliance, she echoed. A pretty word for surrender. Jon's hands curled into fists beneath his cloak. He felt heat stir in his scars, eager and defensive. No, he said. Alliance means we fight together. Daenerys leaned forward slightly on her stone throne. I am the rightful queen of the 7 kingdoms, she said, each word deliberate. Every ruler in Westeros will bend the knee. Jon stared at her. In his mind he saw Lyanna Mormont kneeling, small and fierce. He saw the North's desperate faces. He saw Sansa's eyes saying, don't you dare. I won't kneel, Jon said. The hall went very still. Grey Worm's posture shifted, tension tightening like a drawn string. A few Unsullied tightened grips on spears. Missandei's expression remained calm, but her eyes flicked briefly to Daenerys, as if gauging the queen's temper. Tyrion's mouth tightened, almost imperceptibly, as if he had expected this and feared it anyway. Daenerys' face remained composed, but something cold entered her gaze. Then why are you here? She asked softly. Jon held her eyes. Because I'm not asking you to save me, he said. I'm asking you to save the world. For a long moment, Daenerys did not answer. Then, somewhere deep in the mountain, a distant roar rolled through the stone, and the hall's torches flickered as if startled. Daenerys did not look away from Jon, but Jon saw her fingers tighten on the arm of the throne. You will have my Dragonglass, she said at last, and the words landed like a surprise. Then her eyes narrowed. For now, and you will stay. Jon's stomach tightened. Stay. Daenerys' voice was calm. You will see. You will prove. You will convince me the threat is real enough to drag me north. Her gaze sharpened into something like command. And you will learn something about what you are, Jon Snow. Jon felt his scars warm at her words, as if the mountain itself approved. He did not know if he had won or stepped into a deeper trap, but the Queen of Fire had not refused him, and the heat in his chest had begun to sing. Dusk turned Dragonstone into a silhouette of teeth against the sea. They brought Jon out onto a courtyard open to the wind, where the stone underfoot was slick with rain and the torches burned in sheltered alcoves carved into dragon jaws. The ocean roared below the cliffs, a constant hungry sound that made Jon think of the dead, endless, patient, always returning. Daenerys walked with her court as if she owned the wind itself. Her cloak snapped behind her. Tyrion kept pace to one side, his gaze sharp and cautious. Missandei moved quietly near the queen, calm as always. Grey Worm and Unsullied spread into a wide ring around the courtyard, spears upright, not threatening but ready. Jon stood at the courtyard's center with Davos a few paces behind him, far enough to avoid provoking the Unsullied, close enough to be there if Jon needed a human voice to keep him grounded. Then the shadow passed over them. Jon lifted his head, and there he was, above, perched on a parapet like a living knight. Drogon. Rain beaded on his black scales and ran in thin rivulets down the ridges of his neck. His wings were folded, but even folded they were enormous, the edges ragged like torn cloth made of leather and bone. Smoke curled faintly from his nostrils, thin as breath in winter. His claws gripped the stone as if it were soft. His head tilted, one molten eye fixed on Jon with unsettling intelligence. Jon felt the pull in his chest tighten violently. The heat under his ribs surged toward the dragon like a tide drawn by the moon. He forced himself to breathe slow. The last thing he wanted was to give the dragon any reason to interpret him as prey or threat. Daenerys's voice carried calmly through the courtyard. "He won't bite unless I tell him," she said, though her eyes never left Drogon's. "But he doesn't like strangers." Jon did not look away from the dragon. "Neither do I," he said, and Davos made a strangled sound behind him that might have been laughter or panic. Tyrion cleared his throat softly. "Perhaps," he said carefully, "we should avoid provoking either of them." Daenerys ignored him. She stepped forward into the open space beneath the parapet and lifted her chin. "Drogon," she called. The dragon's head shifted, and Jon felt the movement in his bones like thunder. Drogon's gaze flicked to Daenerys for a heartbeat. Acknowledgement, not submission, then returned to Jon. Daenerys's eyes narrowed slightly. "He's curious," she said, as if that were unusual. Jon's scars tingled. He could feel the torch's flames along the walls flicker in sympathy, responding to the heat in him. He forced his hands to remain at his sides, fingers unclenching slowly. Grey Worm's gaze stayed locked on Jon, suspicion sharp. Missandei watched Jon with quiet curiosity, as if trying to decide whether the rumors were fear or truth. Drogon's chest rose and fell. A low rumble vibrated through the courtyard, half growl, half question. Jon swallowed. He did not know why the so. "Nd" felt like a word he almost understood. Daenerys stepped closer to Jon, stopping at a distance that was both daring and controlled. "You said you can't burn," she said softly. "Is that true?" Jon's mouth tightened. "Fire didn't kill me," he said. "Steel did." Daenerys studied him. "That's not an answer." Jon met her gaze. "Yes," he said, "because lying here felt like suicide. Fire doesn't burn me." A flicker crossed Daenerys's face, something between disbelief and recognition. "And you expect me to believe that?" she said. "I don't expect anything," Jon replied. "I'm telling you." Daenerys looked up at Drogon and spoke in Valyrian, the words sharp and fluid. Jon did not understand them fully, but the sound of the language made his scars warm as if someone had pressed a heated blade to them. Drogon unfurled his wings slightly, rain shedding in a spray. The air stirred. Smoke curled thicker from his nostrils. Daenerys looked back at Jon. "Prove it," she said. Davos took a step forward, panic flashing. "Your Grace." Jon lifted a hand slightly, stopping him. His throat was dry, his heart hammered. The heat in his chest surged, eager and bright, as if it welcomed the test. Daenerys raised her voice. "Drogon." The dragon's head lowered, bringing that molten eye closer, closer, until Jon could see himself reflected in it. A dark man in wet furs, ghost of smoke at his mouth, eyes too tired to be afraid and too stubborn to run. Drogon opened his jaws. Heat rolled out, smelling of sulfur and scorched stone. The Unsullied tensed. Tyrion's face went pale. Missandei's eyes widened slightly. Jon felt the heat and felt it recognize him. The dragon's throat glowed faintly from within, an ember building toward flame. Jon did not move. Somewhere deep inside him, something answered the dragon's ember with its own. Steady, patient, unafraid. The courtyard held its breath, and then Drogon breathed. The fire hit Jon like a wave. It should have consumed him. It should have turned him into screaming ash in a heartbeat, because Dragonfire was not campfire flame. Dragonfire was war-made breath, heat so fierce it could melt stone and boil blood inside armor. Jon felt it anyway, the full force of it slamming into his chest, wrapping around his shoulders, roaring past his ears. His cloak ignited instantly, the fur curling and blackening. the cloth turning to sparks that spiraled up into the wind like burning snow. The smell was sharp and thick. Wool, leather, smoke, and beneath it, the clean, strange truth. It did not hurt. Heat rushed into him, not as pain but as something like breath filling lungs. It poured through his scars, through his bones, into the coiled warmth under his ribs. For a heartbeat, Jon felt enormous, as if the fire had expanded him beyond skin and flesh. He felt the mountain's heat answer. He felt the torches along the walls flare wildly, reacting like frightened animals. He stood unmoving because his body refused to understand fear. The fire roared for what felt like forever, though it could not have been more than a few heartbeats. Jon's hair whipped in the wind, the ends singeing and curling, smoke drifting around his face. He tasted ash on his tongue and something sweeter beneath, like charred honey. Then the fire stopped. Smoke rolled through the courtyard. The wind tore it apart in ragged ribbons, revealing Jon still standing. His cloak was gone, burned away to nothing. The leather straps across his chest were blackened, some melted, hanging in warped strips. Yet his skin beneath was unmarked, pale and wet with rain, the old scars on his chest and throat dark and sealed. For a heartbeat, those scars seemed to glow faintly, not with light exactly but with heat visible as a shimmer, as if coals sat just beneath the surface. Silence hit hard. Unsullied had recoiled, spears half raised. Grey Worm stood rigid, eyes wide in a way Jon suspected Grey Worm rarely allowed himself. Tyrion Lannister had thrown an arm up to shield his face, and now he lowered it slowly, staring as if he had just watched a man walk out of the sun. Missandei's hand had flown to her mouth. Her eyes were huge. Daenerys Targaryen did not move. She stood with her face lit by the dying glow of Dragonfire, and her expression had cracked, shock breaking through command. Her lips parted slightly. Her eyes flicked over Jon's bare, unburnt skin as if searching for deception and finding only reality. Drogon lowered his head, smoke curling from his nostrils. The dragon's eye remained fixed on Jon, but the look had changed. It was not curiosity now. It was something heavier, recognition. Jon's heart hammered. The heat inside him surged, not wild, but potent, like a forge suddenly fed fresh air. He felt too full, as if the Dragonfire had poured into him and had nowhere to go. His hands trembled slightly at his sides. Davos stumbled forward a step, staring at Jon as if seeing him for the first time. "You bloody idiot," he breathed, voice shaking with relief and terror. "You!" Jon exhaled, and his breath came out as smoke, thicker now, dark and warm against the cold air. Drogon rumbled low. The sound vibrated in Jon's ribs, and Jon's scars answered with a prickling heat. Daenerys found her voice at last. "How?" she demanded. Her tone was not accusation. It was raw disbelief, the way a person speaks when the world breaks in front of them. Jon swallowed. His throat was dry, but not from heat. "I don't know," he said. "I died, and something brought me back. Fire did." Daenerys's gaze sharpened at the word. "Fire did?" she repeated slowly, and something in her expression shifted. Calculation sliding back in, wrapping around shock like armor. "Drogon burned you. You should be dead." "I should," Jon agreed. Tyrion stepped forward carefully, as if approaching a wild animal. "This changes things," he said softly. "Quite a few things." Grey Worm's voice cut in hard. "He is sorcery." Jon's head snapped toward him. Heat flared in his chest, defensive. The torches on the walls flickered in sympathy, flames leaning as if listening. Daenerys lifted a hand sharply. Grey Worm went still. Daenerys's eyes remained on Jon. "You said you came for Dragonglass," she said. "You said the dead are coming." Her gaze flicked to Drogon, then back. "You will tell me everything, every detail, every proof." Jon nodded once, forcing his hands to steady. The heat inside him was still too much, coiling tight, hungry for release. He clenched his fists until his nails bit into his palms. Drogon shifted on the parapet, claws scraping stone. The dragon's head lowered again, close enough that Jon felt warm breath across his face. For a heartbeat, Jon felt something in his mind. A brush of presence, immense and ancient, like standing at the edge of a cliff and feeling the sea's weight below. Not words, not thoughts, a sense. Fire recognizes fire. Jon held Drogon's molten gaze and felt the pull in his chest tighten like a chain. Daenerys watched the moment between man and dragon, her face unreadable now, but Jon saw the tension around her eyes. She did not like anything sharing her dragon's attention. And Jon realized, with a cold twist beneath his heat, that he had not only proven he could not burn. He had proven he was something Daenerys Targaryen could not ignore. They moved him into warmth and stone and arguments. Dragonstone's war room was carved out of the mountain like a throat, black walls, low ceiling, maps spread across a table heavy enough to survive an earthquake. Candles burned in clusters, their flames steady, casting sharp shadows along dragon-carved ridges that ran like veins through the rock. The air smelled of parchment, smoke, and the faint sulfur tang that never left the island. Jon stood at the table's edge in a borrowed cloak, plain and rough, not fitted for a king. His own had been burned away, and the absence felt like being stripped. Davos stood beside him, arms crossed, eyes hard. Tyrion sat on a stool opposite, hands steepled, watching everyone like a man trying to keep three fires from touching. Daenerys stood at the head of the table. Grey Worm was behind her, silent and ready. Missandei held a scroll, her gaze moving between faces. Daenerys did not waste time. "You saw them," she said. "The dead." Jon nodded. "At Hardhome," he said, "at the Fist of the First Men, Castle Black.
Ive Fodvigats.
I've seen White Walkers." Daenerys's eyes narrowed. "And you expect me to believe they will cross the wall?" "The wall won't hold," Jon said. His voice was steady, but the certainty in it made Davos glance at him sharply. "It's cracking. The magic is weakening." Grey Worm's jaw tightened. "Magic," he muttered, disdain thick. Tyrion lifted a hand slightly. "To be fair," he said carefully, "we have recently had personal demonstrations that the world's rules are not what the Maesters promised." His eyes flicked briefly to Jon's burned cloak remnants draped over a chair, then back to Daenerys. Daenerys's gaze stayed on Jon. "What proof do you have?" she demanded. "That the dead are more than northern superstition?" Jon swallowed. He had expected this. Still, hearing the demand from a queen who could summon Dragonfire made his patience thin. "I have survivors," he said. "Men who've watched their brothers rise with blue eyes. I have Dragonglass kills. I have Valyrian steel." Daenerys's gaze flicked to Longclaw at Jon's hip. "That sword," she said. "Valyrian steel." "Yes," Jon said. "It kills White Walkers." Daenerys exhaled slowly. "And the dead cannot be reasoned with," she said, as if tasting the concept. "They do not surrender." "No," Jon said. "They take." Silence fell for a heartbeat. Thick. Missandei spoke softly then. "The Queen has seen men who cannot be reasoned with," she said. "Masters, tyrants." Her eyes flicked to Daenerys with a hint of gentle warning. "But even they fear death." Daenerys's mouth tightened. "I do not fear death," she said. Tyrion sighed quietly, as if weary of speeches. "Everyone fears something," he said, then looked at Jon. "What do you need, precisely?" Jon forced himself to focus. "Dragonglass," he said. "As much as you can mine. We need to arm every man who can hold a blade. And we need your help convincing the South." Daenerys's eyes sharpened. "The South will follow me when I take the Iron Throne." Jon's patience snapped. "The South will be dead," he said bluntly, "if you waste time burning kings while the Night King marches." Grey Worm's spear but thudded once on stone. A warning. Davos shifted, ready to bark back. Tyrion's eyes widened slightly, then narrowed, as if impressed and horrified at once. Daenerys went very still. The air in the room felt suddenly hotter, as if the mountain itself had leaned in. You speak to me as if I am your bannerman, Daenerys said softly. Jon met her gaze. He felt the heat in his chest stir, defensive and stubborn. I speak to you as if the world is ending, he said. Because it is. Daenerys held his eyes a moment longer. Then she turned slightly toward Tyrion. You told me he would not kneel, she said. Tyrion spread his hands. I told you he was stubborn, he said. I might have understated it. Daenerys looked back at Jon. If I go north, she said, I risk my armies, my dragons, my claim. Jon's jaw tightened. If you don't, he said, you lose them anyway. A long pause. Daenerys's gaze shifted, for the first time, to the map on the table. She traced the north's vastness with her eyes, then the wall's thin line, then the empty white beyond. You want me to fight a war I cannot see, she said, for a realm that refuses to accept me. Jon's voice lowered. The realm doesn't matter, he said. People do. Daenerys's eyes narrowed. People? She repeated, and something in her expression softened briefly, then hardened again. I will give you Dragonglass, she said. You may mine it. You may take it north. Davos exhaled hard, relief shaking through him. And in return, Daenerys added, eyes locked on Jon, you will stay here long enough to show me proof. You will send for your witnesses. You will bring me evidence I can put before my advisors and my armies. Jon hesitated. Time is mine too, Daenerys cut in, and I will not be tricked into abandoning my war by a man with strange fire in his blood. Her gaze flicked to the burns on Jon's straps, to the smoke that still seemed to cling to him. If you want my dragons in your sky, Jon Snow, you will give me certainty. Tyrion leaned forward. This is reasonable, he said quickly before Jon could speak. Reasonable, and you will not leave, Daenerys finished, without my permission. The words tasted like a cage. Jon's throat tightened. He remembered vows. He remembered chains made of duty and chains made of crowns. He had not crossed a storm to trade one cage for another. Then he thought of the north, of the wall, of dead hands scratching at wood, of Winterfell's pyres burning so the dead could not rise. I'll stay, Jon said at last. His voice was rough. For now. Daenerys watched him, and for a heartbeat Jon saw something in her eyes. Satisfaction, yes, but also wariness. Because when he said for now, it sounded less like surrender and more like a promise he intended to control. And outside the war room, somewhere above the mountain, a dragon roared as if laughing at all of them. The caves were warmer than any crypt. They descended through Dragonstone's belly by torchlight, the air growing thicker, heavier, smelling of wet rock and sulfur. The steps were carved directly into volcanic stone, slick in places where condensation beaded and ran. The deeper they went, the more Jon felt something familiar, a steady heat beneath everything, like the pulse he had felt under the wall. But this heat was not bound under ice. This heat was alive and awake, breathing through the mountain's cracks. Tyrion led the way with a lantern, his face lit from below in sharp angles. I always forget, he muttered, how much I dislike caves. Davos grunted behind Jon. You talk too much for a man who dislikes being trapped, he said. Tyrion glanced back with a thin smile. Talking is how I pretend I'm not trapped. Unsullied followed, silent, spears upright. Their discipline made the cave feel even more claustrophobic, because silence in tight spaces pressed harder than stone. Then the tunnel opened into a vast chamber, and Jon stopped involuntarily. Dragonglass. It jutted from the walls and floor in black, glossy veins, glittering like frozen night. Spires rose like teeth. Thin sheets of obsidian ran along rock surfaces like spilled ink turned solid. In torchlight it looked almost wet, reflecting flame in sharp, jagged highlights. Jon had seen dragonglass before. Small dagger tips, a few spearheads, precious scraps hoarded by the Watch. This was a mountain of it. A weapon cache big enough to arm a world. Miners worked with picks and chisels, chipping obsidian away carefully. because Dragonglass shattered if struck wrong. Their faces were streaked with sweat. Steam rose from cracks in the rock around them, curling through torchlight like ghosts. Jon breathed in, and his scars warmed. The heat in his chest answered the cave's warmth with recognition, like one hearth greeting another. He stepped closer to a wall where dragonglass veins ran thick and pressed his palm against the volcanic stone beside it. Warmth surged into his hand. Not just warmth, pressure. A low rumble that vibrated up his arm and into his ribs, as if the mountain had a heartbeat and his body had decided to match it. Tyrion noticed. "Feeling at home?" he asked lightly, but his eyes were sharp. Jon pulled his hand back. "Something's here," he said. Davos frowned. "Stone," he muttered. "That's what's here." Jon shook his head. "Not just stone." He stared at the dragonglass, and for a moment the black surface seemed to shift, reflecting more than torchlight. He saw a flash, red sky over black rock, a city of stone and smoke, towers like spears. It vanished as quickly as it came, leaving only the hiss of steam and the scrape of picks. He forced his breathing steady. "We'll take as much as we can," he said, turning away from the wall before the visions could return. Davos nodded, relief and dread braided in his gaze. "Ships are already being readied," he said. "Manderly, hulls, a few of the queens. We'll send it north in waves." Jon pictured crates stacked in Winterfell's yard, men hammering obsidian into spearheads, free folk lashing dragonglass to shafts with rawhide. He pictured the wall's defenders holding black blades against blue-eyed horrors. The image steadied him. Then Tyrion's voice cut through, quieter. "She's watching you," he said. Jon looked up. Daenerys stood at the cavern's edge, her cloak dark against the torchlit stone, her silver hair braided tight. Grey Worm was with her, silent as ever. The queen's gaze moved from the dragonglass to the miners to Jon's bare forearms where burnt straps had once been. Her expression was unreadable, but Jon felt the weight of it like a hand on his throat. Daenerys descended a few steps, careful on slick stone, and stopped a short distance away. "You'll have what you asked for," she said. "If your threat is real." "It is," Jon answered, and the certainty in his voice made the miners' picks seem louder for a moment. Daenerys's gaze lingered on Jon's face. "Then you will bring me proof," she said. Jon held her eyes. "I will," he said, though he did not yet know what shape proof would take, or how much blood it would cost. Daenerys turned away without another word, cloak trailing through steam. Jon watched her go and felt the fire in his chest coil tighter. He had come for dragonglass. He had gotten it. Now he needed something harder, belief. That night, Jon could not sleep. Dragonstone's rooms were warm, but the warmth was wrong. It came from stone that held heat like a secret, from vents that breathed volcanic air, from braziers that burned with oil and stubborn flame. The warmth pressed against Jon's skin like hands that did not know how to comfort. He missed Winterfell's cold. He missed Ghost's weight at his side. Here there was only stone and the faint, constant sense of being watched. His chamber was carved from black rock, the walls etched with dragon reliefs. Wings spread, teeth bared, tails coiled around columns. In torchlight, they looked almost alive. A brazier burned near the center, its flame steady and bright. Jon stripped off his shirt and stared at himself in the dim light. His scars looked darker here, the sealed punctures and slashes across his chest like ink marks. When he breathed, he saw the scars shimmer faintly, as if heat moved under the skin like water under ice. He held his hand over the brazier. The flame leaned toward him. Jon's fingers lowered until the fire licked his skin. It did not hurt. It felt like recognition, like something returning to where it belonged. He closed his fist around the flame and felt it compress, brightening, obedient. He remembered Drogon's fire pouring over him like a wave. He remembered how it had filled him. He remembered the moment, after, when the dragon's eye had held his and something had reached across the gap between beast and man like a bridge made of heat. Jon opened his fist, letting the flame rise back to the brazier. The pressure in his chest remained. Too much heat with nowhere to go. He moved to the window. Outside, the sea was a black mouth under storm clouds. Lightning flickered faintly far off, illuminating the jagged edge of Dragonstone's cliffs. The wind carried salt and smoke. Somewhere above, out of sight, wings beat through cloud. A shadow passed across the moonless sky, vast, slow, circling. Jon felt the dragon's presence like a weight on his skin. His scars warmed in answer. He closed his eyes and tried to reach for Ghost the way he sometimes did in the north. For a heartbeat he felt only emptiness. No fur, no red eyes, no snow scent. The absence hit like grief. He had left a part of himself behind with the direwolf. Or perhaps the direwolf had been the thing anchoring him to being only Jon. Now the fire had more room. A low rumble rolled through Jon's mind. Faint, distant, like thunder under mountains. Not the sea, not the storm, something deeper. The same roar he had heard beneath the wall. Jon's eyes snapped open. He pressed his palm against the window's cold stone frame and felt, beneath the surface, heat, Dragonstone's living warmth. It answered his touch the way the wall's hidden heat had, but stronger, freer. For a heartbeat the room blurred, and Jon saw a different chamber. Black stone lit by red sky, dragon skulls lining walls, a man in dark robes with silver hair speaking Valyrian over. A bowl of flame. The man turned, and his eyes were molten. Jon flinched back, the vision snapping away. His breath came out as smoke. He realized, with sudden dread, that his visions were getting clearer, that something was using his fire as a path. He turned from the window and stared at the brazier again. The flame danced, steady, patient. "Why me?" Jon whispered, and the words sounded childish in the dragon-carved room. The brazier did not answer. The stone did not answer. But outside, a dragon roared, loud enough this time that the window frame vibrated, and Jon felt the sound in his ribs like an answering call. He did not know if Drogon roared because Daenerys had summoned him, or because he was restless, or because he sensed Jon's wakefulness through stone. Jon only knew his own fire surged in response, eager and bright, as if it wanted to answer the roar with a roar of its own. He clenched his fists until his nails bit skin. He was a king in the north. But here, on this black island, he was something else too, something the dragons recognized. And if the dragons recognized him, what else might? Daenerys summoned him before dawn, when the sky was still bruised and the sea still raged like something half asleep and angry. They brought Jon to the cliffs where Dragonstone's stone teeth jutted over black water. Torches burned in iron brackets along the path, their flames snapping in the wind. Dragon statues carved from black rock watched the sea with bared teeth, frozen in eternal threat. Daenerys stood near the cliff's edge, cloak pulled tight, hair braided back. The wind tried to steal her balance, failed. She looked carved from stubbornness. Tyrion lingered farther back, hands clasped, face thoughtful. Missandei stood near Daenerys' shoulder. Grey Worm stood slightly behind, eyes scanning the darkness as if expecting an assassin to climb out of the sea itself. Jon approached and stopped a few paces away, keeping distance that was neither submissive nor reckless. Daenerys did not greet him with titles this time. She looked up at the sky. A shadow moved through the clouds. Drogon glided low over the cliff, wings outstretched, riding the wind as if it were his. His silhouette swallowed torchlight for a heartbeat. He banked, circling back, and the air moved with him. A gust that pressed cloaks against bodies and sent sparks spinning up into the dark. Jon felt the dragon before he saw him fully. The pull in his chest tightened, hot and heavy. His scars warmed. Daenerys' gaze flicked to Jon. "He has never done that," she said softly. Jon did not pretend not to understand. "Done what?" he asked, though he knew. "Circle like that," Daenerys said, voice controlled. "Not for strangers." Jon's breath came out as smoke in the cold air. "Maybe he doesn't see me as a stranger," he said, and the words tasted dangerous. Grey Worm's posture tightened. Missandei's eyes widened slightly. Tyrion's mouth twitched as if he wanted to say something and decided against it. Daenerys's face hardened. "He is mine," she said. The possessiveness in her voice was not petty. It was the possessiveness of someone whose power had always been tied to fire made flesh. "All of them are mine." Jon met her gaze. "Then tell him to burn me again," he said. Daenerys's eyes narrowed. "You want that?" "No," Jon said. "But you want certainty." Daenerys stared at him, then lifted her chin and called out in Valyrian. The words were sharp. Command. The wind tried to tear them away. It didn't. Drogon banked and dropped lower. He came in over the cliff's edge, wings beating slower now, air thundering with each stroke. Jon felt the sound in his bones. He held himself still, forcing every instinct to stay leashed. Drogon's claws scraped stone as he landed on a nearby outcropping, too close. The dragon's head lowered, massive and silent, bringing his molten eye level with Jon. Daenerys watched with attention that made her look like she might strike the dragon herself if he dared shift his attention. Jon stared into that molten eye and felt something in his mind brew. Against him, heat and hunger and ancient memory. Not words, not thought, but presence. Pressed into Jon's skull like a heavy hand. Jon's scars flared with warmth. The dragon's nostrils flared, smoke curling out. The air smelled of sulfur and salt. Jon lifted his hand slowly, palm open, the gesture careful. Half offering, half challenge. He did not reach for the dragon's snout. He did not touch. He simply held his hand in the space between them and let the heat in him speak without words. For a heartbeat, the world narrowed. Torch flames leaned toward Jon as if listening. The wind seemed to hesitate. Drogon's head tilted slightly. The dragon's eye did not blink. Then, impossibly, the dragon lowered his head another fraction. Not submission, not obedience, but acknowledgement. Like a king acknowledging another king across a battlefield. Daenerys sucked in a sharp breath. Tyrion's eyes widened, and for the first time in a long while, his face showed pure astonishment. Grey Worm's jaw clenched. His hand tightened on his spear shaft. Missandei stared as if she had just witnessed a prayer answered. Jon felt his heart hammer, heat surging through him so hard his vision blurred at the edges. He could feel the dragon's warmth in his bones. He could feel the mountain's heat under his feet. He could feel the distant cold in the north like a bruise on the horizon. Daenerys stepped forward suddenly, voice tight. "Enough!" she snapped in Valyrian. Drogon's head lifted slightly, reluctantly, as if the dragon resented being pulled away from whatever silent exchange had just occurred. Daenerys turned her gaze on Jon, and the look in her eyes was sharp and unsettled. "What are you?" she demanded. Jon swallowed, hands lowering slowly. Smoke curled from his lips. "I don't know," he admitted. "I was Jon Snow, then I died, and fire brought me back." Daenerys's voice dropped. "Dangerous. Fire did not bring men back," she said. "I brought dragons back." Her eyes flicked to Drogon, then back. This is something else." Jon held her gaze. "Maybe," he said quietly. "We don't have time to name it." Daenerys's jaw tightened. She looked out over the sea as if the answer might be written in waves. Then she looked back at Jon. "I will let you mine my Dragonglass," she said. "You will send for your witnesses. You will show me proof of the dead." Her eyes narrowed. "And if you are lying—" "I'm not," Jon said. Daenerys's gaze sharpened. "If you are lying," she continued, ignoring him, "I will burn the north and everyone in it who calls you king." Davos's warning echoed in Jon's memory. "Don't provoke dragons. Don't stare at dragons. Don't—" Jon forced his voice steady. "If I'm lying," he said, "then you can burn me first." Daenerys stared at him for a long moment. Then she turned slightly, eyes going back to Drogon. The dragon watched Jon's still, molten gaze heavy. Daenerys's voice softened a fraction. Not kind, but thoughtful. "Fire meets fire," she remured, almost as if repeating something she had once heard and dismissed. Jon felt the heat in his chest coil tighter, eager and wary. On the cliff edge, with sea roaring below and dragons circling above, Jon understood something with sudden clarity. The war for the living would not be won by crowns alone. It would be won by whatever force now stirred in his blood, and whatever price that force demanded. The work began at once, because Daenerys Targaryen did nothing by halves, and because Tyrion Lannister understood that promises meant nothing until they became crates and ships. Dragonstone's belly rang with the scrape of iron and the sharp snap of obsidian splitting free. Miners moved carefully, picks biting at black seams that gleamed in torchlight like frozen night. Each strike had to be measured. Dragonglass was stubborn and brittle. A wrong angle shattered it into useless shards. Men learned fast because the Unsullied did not shout, did not threaten, but their stillness carried its own demand. Do it right. Jon walked between the veins with a strange sense of déjà vu. The heat under Dragonstone's stone reminded him of the pulse beneath the wall. Only this was open, unbound, breathing through cracks with a hiss. Steam curled around his boots and vanished. The air was heavy with sulfur and wet rock. Somewhere deeper, something groaned. A slow, volcanic sigh that made the cavern feel like a throat. Davos Seaworth watched the work with a sailor's practicality. If we can fill enough ships, he muttered, we can arm every man between here and the wall. Every man between here and the wall, Tyrion echoed, lantern swinging slightly as he stepped around a pile of newly chipped obsidian. And then perhaps we can convince the men south of it that the world contains something other than their own petty grudges. Jon did not answer. He watched a miner lift a finished dragonglass blade from a crate, turning it carefully so torchlight ran across its edge. It was sharper than steel, black as midnight, and it looked like something that belonged in a tale, not a man's hand. Jon remembered the first time he had seen dragonglass used on a Wight, the way the dead thing had shrieked and collapsed as if the black stone had reminded it it should not exist. He reached out, fingers hovering near the obsidian. He did not touch it yet. The heat in his chest tightened, curious, like a living thing sniffing at a stranger. Tyrion noticed his hesitation. Afraid it will bite? He asked lightly. Jon's mouth tightened. I'm afraid of wasting time, he said. Tyrion's smile flickered. A reasonable fear, he replied, and for a moment his humor slipped, revealing something weary underneath. I've seen kingdoms drown in wasted time. Jon stepped closer to a thick vein running through the wall. The obsidian shimmered faintly, reflecting torchlight in sharp slivers. He pressed his palm to the volcanic stone beside it. Warmth surged into him, clean, strong, like a breath taken by a sleeping giant. His scars tingled. The torches nearby flared a fraction, as if leaning. A miner glanced up, eyes widening, then quickly looked away as if fearing his gaze might summon more strange things. Jon pulled his hand back slowly. It's alive, he murmured. Davos frowned. Stone's not alive. Not alive, Jon agreed, voice low. Awake. Tyrion's eyes sharpened. You keep using that RD, he said. Awake. Jon stared at the obsidian vein. For a heartbeat, the black surface seemed to hold more than torchlight. He saw a flash, red sky, black stone towers, a dragon's shadow sweeping across the world. It vanished as quickly as it came, leaving only the hiss of steam and the scrape of picks. He forced his breathing steady. We'll take as much as we can, he said, turning away from the wall before the visions could return. Davos nodded, relief and dread braided in his gaze. Ships are already being readied, he said. Manderly hulls, a few of the queens. We'll send it north in waves. Jon pictured crates stacked in Winterfell's yard, men hammering obsidian into spearheads, free folk lashing dragonglass to shafts with rawhide. He pictured the wall's defenders holding black blades against blue-eyed horrors. The image steadied him. Then Tyrion's voice cut through, quieter. She's watching you, he said. Jon looked up. Daenerys stood at the cavern's edge, her cloak dark against the torchlit stone, her silver hair braided tight. Grey Worm was with her, silent as ever. The queen's gaze moved from the Dragonglass to the miners to Jon's bare forearms where burnt straps had once been. Her expression was unreadable, but Jon felt the weight of it like a hand on his throat. Daenerys descended a few steps, careful on slick stone, and stopped a short distance away. "You'll have what you asked for," she said. "If your threat is real." "It is," Jon answered, and the certainty in his voice made the miners' picks seem louder for a moment. Daenerys's gaze lingered on Jon's face. "Then you will bring me proof," she said. Jon held her eyes. "I will," he said, though he did not yet know what shape proof would take, or how much blood it would cost. Daenerys turned away without another word, cloak trailing through steam. Jon watched her go and felt the fire in his chest coil tighter. He had come for Dragonglass. He had gotten it. Now he needed something harder, belief. The raven could have warned him. The wind could have carried a hint. Instead, Jon found out the way most truths arrived in his life. Suddenly, without mercy, and with the weight of the past behind them. It was morning when Missandei came to the chamber they had given him. Black stone, a brazier, a window that looked out over angry sea. She spoke softly, but there was urgency beneath the calm. "A ship has arrived from the south," she said. "A man asks for you by name." Jon's first thought was Sansa, a desperate messenger. News of the wall, news of death moving faster than men could. He followed Missandei through Dragonstone's corridors, downstairs slick with condensation, past carved dragon faces that watched him with open stone mouths. The air smelled of smoke and salt. Somewhere above, a dragon rumbled like distant thunder. They emerged onto the docks and into a cold wind that tasted of sea spray. A small boat had pulled in. No warship, no proud banner, just a worn hull that looked like it had been bullied by waves for most of its life. A gangplank had been thrown down. Two figures stood at its end, hesitant beneath the gaze of unsullied guards. One was a woman in rough clothes, hair tucked beneath a hood, holding a bundled infant close. The other, Samwell Tarly. He looked thinner than Jon remembered, and older in the eyes. His face was wind-chapped, his cheeks hollow from travel, but when he saw Jon, something in him broke open like a dam. "Jon," Sam said, voice cracking. For a heartbeat, Jon could not move. He had left Sam at Castle Black. Left him with books and ravens and the stubborn courage that never looked like courage because it came wrapped in fear. Seeing him here on Dragonstone felt like seeing a piece of the North dragged into fire. Then Jon crossed the dock in long strides and pulled Sam into an embrace so hard Sam wheezed. Sam's arms wrapped around Jon's back, clumsy and fierce, as if terrified Jon might vanish again if he let go. "You're alive," Sam blurted, as if saying it could make it stick. I heard, but..." Jon pulled back, hands on Sam's shoulders, searching his face. "What are you doing here?" Jon demanded. "How did you..."
Sam swallowed, breath trembling.
"I had to," he said. "I had to see you. And I had to tell you. Tell her. Tell everyone, because they won't believe ravens." His eyes flicked past Jon to the looming black walls, the unsullied line, the torches burning steady. "This place, I didn't think it was real." Davos approached behind Jon, brow furrowed. "Samwell Tarly," he said, and there was genuine relief in his voice. "Thank the gods, or whoever's listening." Gilly stepped forward cautiously, eyes wide, baby held close. "Jon Snow," she said softly, as if speaking the name might summon danger. Jon's gaze softened when it met hers. "Gilly," he said, and there was warmth in it that surprised him. "You made it." Gilly nodded, swallowing. "Sam said we had to," she murmured. "He said, the dead." Jon glanced down at the bundle in her arms. The baby's face was mostly hidden, only a small nose and cheek visible. The infant slept, unaware of queens and dragons and the way the world was bending. Sam followed his gaze and tightened his grip on his satchel strap. "He's safe," Sam said quickly, "as safe as anyone can be." He hesitated, then said, "There's more. There's..." He swallowed hard. "There's things you need to know, Jon." About the dead. About you. Jon's scars warmed at the last word, an involuntary pulse. He forced his face still. About me, he repeated. Sam nodded, eyes shining. I found records, he said. Old ones. At the Citadel. His voice lowered, urgent and trembling. Not just about Dragonglass. Not just about White Walkers. About Rhaegar Targaryen. About Lyanna Stark. Jon felt the dock tilt beneath his boots as if a wave had struck the wood. Davos stared at Sam, then at Jon, confusion and dread mixing. What about them? Davos demanded. Sam's eyes locked on Jon's. It changes everything, he whispered. Behind them, one of the Unsullied shifted slightly. Missandei watched with calm interest. Grey Worm stood rigid, gaze sharp, clearly deciding whether this reunion was threat or spectacle. Jon forced himself to breathe. The air came out faintly smoky. We'll speak inside, Jon said, voice hoarse. He glanced at Grey Worm and Missandei. Tell your queen Samwell Tarly has come from the north with proof. Missandei's brows lifted slightly. She will want to see him, she said.
Sam swallowed.
I want to see her, he admitted. If she has dragons, if she has Dragonglass, then maybe we can actually save the world, Davos finished grimly. Sam nodded, eyes bright with terror and hope. Yes, he whispered. Yes. Jon looked out over the black water for a heartbeat, as if expecting to see the north floating there, calling him home. Instead, he saw only storm clouds and distant cliffs. He turned back to Sam and felt the fire in his chest coil, wary and alert. Samwell Tarly had brought more than proof. He had brought a truth that might burn every crown in Westeros. Daenerys Targaryen listened the way a blade listened to a whetstone. Silent, still, letting the sound of truth scrape across her without showing what it did. Sam stood at the war table with his hands trembling around a scroll older than any oath Jon had ever sworn. The parchment was brittle, ink faded in places. The seal of some long-dead house cracked like old bone. Beside it lay dragonglass blades, freshly chipped, sharp enough to slice candlelight. Tyrion had positioned himself between Sam and Daenerys like a bridge, ready to carry words both ways before they shattered. Missandei stood close, reading quickly. Grey Worm and Unsullied watched with an unreadable stillness that felt like a threat simply by existing. Jon stood slightly back from the table's edge, because he did not want to loom, and because the heat in him felt restless in this room, reacting to Daenerys' presence the way fire reacted to wind. Sam cleared his throat. Your Grace, he began, voice shaky, and then corrected himself as if unsure which grace belonged to which person. Queen Daenerys.
I'm Samwell Tarly.
I served in the Night's Watch. He swallowed. I've seen Wights. I've seen the dead rise. And He glanced at Jon, eyes bright. I've watched Jon Snow die and come back. Daenerys' gaze flicked to Jon, then back to Sam. You have proof, she said. Sam nodded quickly, fumbling in his satchel. He pulled out a small bundle wrapped in cloth. When he unwrapped it, a black shard of dragonglass lay in his palm, along with something else. A brittle piece of bone, charred and blackened. This was a Wight, Sam said, voice hushed. We burned it, but the bone remains. Dragonglass killed it. He held up the shard. This is what works. Daenerys stared at the bone, her expression tightening. A charred bone proves nothing, she said coldly. Sam flinched, then pushed on, because Sam's courage had never been loud. It had always been stubborn. Then listen to the records, he insisted. There are writings, accounts from the Long Night, from the First War against the dead. The Maesters dismissed them as myth, but they match what we've seen. Tyrion leaned in, voice gentle. Sam is not a man prone to hysteria, he said to Daenerys. If he says there are records, there are records. Daenerys did not look at Tyrion. Read, she commanded. Missandei took the scroll and read aloud in a clear voice that made the ancient words sound present. The passage spoke of cold shadows and dead men walking and blades of black glass that drank winter's magic. It spoke of a wall of ice built with spells to hold back darkness. It was not poetic. It was practical, as if written by someone who had watched the dead take a village and decided future generations deserved warning. Davos listened with his jaw clenched, nodding slowly as if each line matched what he had feared. Jon felt the cold pressure at the edge of his mind shift, recognition, like a distant enemy turning its head. Daenerys's gaze remained on the scroll, then lifted to Jon. "You said the wall is weakening," she said. "You said the dead will cross." "They will," Jon said, "whether we argue about it or not."
Sam nodded fiercely.
"They already test it," he added. "They probe. They gather. We've seen them move like an army." Daenerys's eyes narrowed. "And you expect me to abandon my war for a threat beyond my sight?" Jon's voice went hard. "You expect the world to wait while you win your throne," he replied. The air tightened. Grey Worm shifted slightly. Tyrion's eyes flicked between them like a man watching a spark near spilled oil. Sam swallowed and forced himself to speak again. "There's more," he said quickly. "There's another truth." His gaze went to Jon, and Jon felt his chest tighten. "It's about who Jon Snow is." Daenerys's eyes sharpened. "Who he is," she repeated. Jon's mouth went dry. Davos's brow furrowed. Tyrion's posture changed subtly, interest sharpening, suspicion waking. Sam's hands trembled as he pulled out a second parchment, newer, not ancient, with the Citadel's careful script. "I read records in Old Town," Sam said. "A High Septon's diary. It mentioned an annulment, a secret marriage." He looked at Jon, voice breaking. "Rhaegar Targaryen didn't abduct Lyanna Stark. He married her. Legally." Silence slammed down. Jon stared at Sam as if he had spoken a different language. "No," Jon whispered, because the word was all his mind could find. Sam's eyes filled. "Yes," he said. "And Bran Stark, your brother, he saw it. He saw the vision. Lyanna Stark gave birth. She named you." Jon's scars flared with heat, sudden and sharp, and for a heartbeat the candles on the table flickered wildly as if struck by a gust that did not exist. Tyrion inhaled slowly, face going very still. Davos's mouth opened, then shut, then opened again as if his tongue could not decide what reality required. Daenerys did not move. She stared at Jon with a gaze that had frozen armies and freed slaves. "Say it," she demanded of Sam, voice low. "Say the name." Sam swallowed hard. "Aegon Targaryen," he whispered, "son of Rhaegar Targaryen and Lyanna Stark." The war room seemed to tilt. Jon's mind flashed. Ned Stark's face, stern and gentle. His father's silence like a wall. The way Ned had held him at arm's length without ever letting him fall. Jon had thought it was shame. He understood now it had been protection. Daenerys's eyes narrowed to slits. "That's not possible," she said, and her voice was too controlled, too careful. "Rhaegar's son died in King's Landing." Sam's voice shook. "That was another child," he insisted. This was hidden. Ned Stark hid him." He looked at Jon, voice raw. "He hid you." Jon swallowed, throat tight enough to hurt. He wanted to deny it. He wanted to call it nonsense. He wanted to be Jon Snow again, simple and brutal and known. But the fire in him surged. Recognition answering recognition, like a door opening inside his chest. Daenerys watched Jon, and in her gaze Jon saw something shift. Fear, not of him personally, but of what he represented. A claim. A rival. A story that could unmake her own. Tyrion spoke carefully, voice quiet. "If this is true," he said, "then it explains quite a great deal." Grey Worm's voice cut through, blunt. "He lies," he said.
Sam flinched.
"I don't," he whispered. "I swear." Daenerys raised a hand, silencing Grey Worm without looking at him. Her eyes stayed on Jon. "If you are Aegon Targaryen," she said softly, "then you have a claim." Jon's jaw tightened. "I don't want your throne," he said. Daenerys's mouth twitched, not quite a smile. "Everyone wants something," she said. Jon felt heat rise in his chest, defensive and exhausted. "I want the living to survive," he said. "That's all I've ever wanted." Daenerys stared at him a long moment. Then she turned her gaze back to Sam's scroll, to the dragonglass on the table, to the bone shard like a warning from the future. "Mine the dragonglass," she said finally, voice clipped.
Phil Shoops.
"Send it north." Her eyes flicked to Jon again, sharp as a blade. "And you, Jon Snow, Aegon Targaryen, whatever name you hide behind, you will stay here until I decide what to do with this truth." Jon's stomach tightened, cage again. But beneath that, something else stirred. A low, steady pull toward dragons, toward ancient fire, toward a destiny he had not asked for. He looked at Daenerys and understood with sudden clarity. The dead were not the only threat. Power was. Daenerys did not give Jon time to breathe after the truth. She gave him dragons. It was afternoon when Grey Worm arrived at Jon's chamber with 2 Unsullied behind him and a face that looked carved from disapproval. "The Queen commands," he said. Jon followed because refusing would only tighten the cage. Davos trailed behind, muttering curses under his breath about foreign queens and stone islands that smelled like brimstone. Tyrion walked with them too, hands clasped, eyes sharp, as if he were watching a dangerous experiment unfold. They entered a courtyard carved open to the sky, surrounded by black stone walls and dragon statues, so large they made men look like ants. The air was warmer here, not sun warm, stone warm, like the mountain breathed up heat through cracks. And there they were, Viserion and Rhaegal. One was pale gold, scales catching light like molten coin. The other was deep green, darker along the ridges, eyes bright with fierce intelligence. Chains ran from their necks to iron posts embedded in stone, thick links that clinked with every shift of muscle. The chains were not necessary to keep them from fleeing. They could have flown away long ago. The chains were for everyone else's comfort. A lie made of iron. Daenerys stood near the courtyard center, her posture rigid. Missandei was at her side. Grey Worm lingered just behind, tense. A few Unsullied formed a wide ring, spears upright. Tyrion hovered at the edge like a man who wanted to be anywhere else and yet could not look away. Jon stepped into the open space and felt 2 enormous gazes land on him at once. The dragons' heads lifted, nostrils flared. A low rumble rolled through the courtyard like distant thunder. Jon's scars warmed. The fire in his chest surged, eager and heavy, as if it recognized kin. Viserion leaned forward, chains clinking. Rhaegal did the same, a deeper rumble vibrating in his throat. Their eyes fixed on Jon with a focus that made the Unsullied stillness tighten. Daenerys' voice cut through, calm but strained. "They smell you," she said. Jon didn't look away from the dragons. "They smell fire," he replied. Daenerys' jaw tightened. "They smell me," she corrected. Jon forced his breath slow. Smoke curled faintly from his lips. "Maybe," he said, "maybe they smell both." Grey Worm's hand tightened on his spear shaft, the motion small but telling. Tyrion's eyes flicked to Grey Worm, then to Daenerys, as if ready to intervene with words before steel did what steel always wanted to do. Daenerys stepped forward, chin lifted. "Rhaegal," she called in Valyrian, voice sharp. The green dragon's head turned toward her, acknowledgement in the movement. Then Daenerys looked back at Jon. "Touch him," she said, and the command was directed at Jon, not the dragon. "If you truly are what they think you are, prove it." Davos made a low sound behind Jon. "This is madness," he muttered. Jon felt his pulse hammer. He did not fear being burned. He feared what would happen if he wasn't. He feared what would happen if the dragons accepted him too easily, because acceptance would make him something Daenerys could not control, and kings who could not be controlled tended to die. Still, Jon stepped forward with his hands open, palms visible, moving slowly the way one approached a skittish horse. Rhaegal's head lowered, breath hot and wet. The smell of sulfur and meat filled Jon's nose. The dragon's eye, green, bright, ancient, fixed on Jon's face. Jon stopped at arm's length and lifted his hand carefully. For a heartbeat he hesitated, feeling the fire in him surge toward the dragon like a tide. He forced it down, forced himself to be a man, not a furnace. His palm touched Rhaegal's snout. The dragon did not flinch. Instead, the massive head leaned into Jon's touch, chains clinking softly, as if the dragon were pressing against a familiar hand. A sound rose from the Unsullied ring, an involuntary hiss of breath. Missandei's eyes widened. Tyrion's mouth parted slightly, astonishment breaking through calculation. Daenerys went very still. Jon slid his hand along the dragon's scales. They were warm, not from sun, from life. He felt a low vibration beneath them, like a heartbeat the size of a drum. Rhaegal rumbled, and the sound vibrated through Jon's bones. Jon's scars warmed in answer, and for a moment Jon felt something brush his mind: heat, memory, hunger, an ancient sense of sky. Then Viserion leaned forward too, chains rattling. Jon turned slowly and stepped toward the golden dragon. Daenerys' voice came tight. "Be careful," she said, and Jon heard the fear in it. Not fear for Jon's life, but fear for her dragon's loyalty. Jon placed his hand against Viserion's snout. The dragon's eye blinked once, slow and deliberate. Then Viserion lowered his head further, allowing Jon to rest his palm more fully, as if the dragon were offering him the shape of trust. Jon swallowed. The heat in his chest surged so hard it made his vision blur at the edges. He could feel the dragon's warmth wrapping around him like a cloak. He could feel something in the air shift, an ancient current, a thread of power connecting living fire to living fire. Daenerys stepped forward sharply, voice rising. "Enough," she snapped in Valyrian, and both dragons' heads lifted slightly, reluctant. Jon lowered his hand, forcing himself to step back. The dragons watched him, eyes bright, their rumbling quieting into something like curiosity rather than threat. Chains still hung heavy at their throats, but the weight felt suddenly wrong, like shackles on the wrong prisoners. Daenerys stared at Jon, her face pale with anger and all braided together. She stopped, as if the words tasted bitter. "They accepted you." Jon's voice was hoarse. "I didn't ask them to," he said. Daenerys' gaze sharpened. "Dragons don't accept without reason." Jon looked at his hands. They were unburnt, steady, but he could feel heat under his skin, like coals. "Neither does fire," he murmured. Tyrion spoke softly, breaking the silence. "Well," he said, and there was genuine wonder in it, "this complicates everything." Grey Worm's eyes remained hard. "He is a threat," he said flatly. Daenerys did not look away from Jon. "Or a weapon," she replied, and the word made Jon's stomach twist. He did not want to be a weapon. He did not want to be anyone's. But as the dragons watched him with those molten eyes, Jon realized with sudden clarity that whatever he had become, it belonged to itself first. And Daenerys Targaryen would not like that. Daenerys cornered him after, not with soldiers, but with silence. It was in a corridor carved narrow through black stone, torchlight flickering over dragon reliefs that seemed to writhe with shadows. The air was warm, close, smelling faintly of smoke and salt. Jon could hear distant waves pounding cliffs like a heartbeat that refused to slow. Daenerys walked ahead of him, then stopped so abruptly Jon nearly collided with her. She turned, eyes dark and sharp. "You didn't flinch," she said. Jon's jaw tightened. "From what?" "From them," Daenerys said, and her voice held a tremor she refused to acknowledge. "My dragons. Men flinch. Kings flinch. Even my advisors flinch." Jon held her gaze. "I've flinched enough in my life," he said. "It didn't save anyone." Daenerys' eyes narrowed. "You touched them," she said softly, and the softness was more dangerous than anger. "They accepted you." Jon's voice went rough. "I didn't command them." Daenerys stepped closer, her cloak brushing stone. "And yet they leaned toward you," she said. "As if you were—" She stopped, jaw tightening, as if the word offended her. "As if you were family." Jon felt the fire in his chest stir, defensive. If Samwell Tarly is right, Jon said quietly, then I am Targaryen. Daenerys' expression hardened like cooled lava. If, she echoed. Jon swallowed. I didn't ask to be, he said. I didn't even know. Daenerys' gaze flicked over Jon's face, searching. And what will you do with it? She demanded. This name, this claim, this, her voice tightened. This threat. Jon's mouth twisted. I'm not your threat, he said. The dead are. Daenerys' eyes flashed. The dead do not sit thrones, she snapped. Men do, and men will use any story they can to tear down the woman who comes to take what is hers. Jon's patience frayed. What is yours? He demanded. A chair of blades? A city that will burn if it resists? You talk about thrones like they're worth more than breath. Daenerys' face went very still. The torch beside them flared slightly, reacting to the heat rising off Jon's skin, then steadied again. I crossed the world, she said softly. I lost everything. I bled. I burned. I freed slaves. I broke chains. I watched people die for my dream. Her eyes sharpened. Do not tell me what is worth something. Jon's throat tightened, not with fear but with something like understanding. He knew what it was to carry a vow you didn't ask for. He knew what it was to be shaped by loss until your purpose was the only thing left. I'm not mocking what you did, Jon said, voice lower. I'm telling you your dream won't matter if winter wins. Daenerys stared at him a moment longer, then looked away down the corridor as if the stone might offer answers. I want to believe you, she admitted quietly, and the admission surprised Jon more than any threat. But belief is a blade too. It can cut the hand that holds it. Jon exhaled, smoke curling faintly. Then let me show you, he said. Let me prove it. Daenerys' gaze snapped back to him. How? She demanded. Bring me a monster? Drag a corpse into my hall? Jon hesitated. The image came unbidden. Whites clawing at wood, blue eyes in the dark. If that's what it takes, he said. Daenerys' mouth tightened. You would risk my men, she said. You would risk my dragons. Jon met her gaze. I would risk everything, he said, and the bluntness was ugly but honest. Because the alternative is losing everything. A shadow moved at the far end of the corridor. Tyrion stood there, watching quietly, face thoughtful. Missandei lingered near a doorway, eyes calm but attentive. Grey Worm was a darker shadow behind Daenerys, posture rigid, hand too close to his spear. Daenerys' eyes flicked briefly toward Tyrion, as if reminding herself she still had advisors and not just instincts. Then she looked back at Jon, and the look was no longer shock or anger. It was calculation. You will send word to the north, she said. You will bring me your proof. You will bring me witnesses. You will bring me whatever you must to make the dead real in my eyes. Jon nodded once. And this claim, Daenerys continued, voice steady now, this name Samwell Tarly spoke, Aegon Targaryen, will not be spoken in my halls until I decide what it means. Jon's jaw tightened. It's not yours to decide, he said before he could stop himself. The words hung like a spark. Daenerys' eyes narrowed. For a heartbeat, Jon thought she might order Grey Worm to seize him. Instead, she stepped closer, so close Jon could smell smoke on her cloak, could see the fine strain at the corners of her eyes. You are in my fortress, she whispered, surrounded by my soldiers, under my dragons. Her gaze burned. Do not forget where you stand. Jon's breath smoked. He held her gaze because lowering it would be surrender. I know where I stand, he said quietly. I stand where the living still have a chance. Daenerys stared at him a long moment. Then she turned away, cloak snapping, and walked down the corridor without another word. Jon remained still until her footsteps faded. He realized his hands were clenched hard enough to ache. He forced them to open. Tyrion approached slowly, expression careful. You have a gift, he said softly, for making powerful people very angry. Jon looked at him, tired. It's not a gift, he muttered. Tyrion's smile was thin. No, he agreed. It's a habit. Jon stared at the torchlight reflecting off black stone dragons and felt the heat in his chest coil tighter. Not satisfied, not soothed, just awake. He had one Dragonglass. He had one attention. Now he had to win belief without being consumed by the fire that came with it. Tyrion found him before midday, as if he had decided the best way to handle a problem was to feed it information. "You should see something," Tyrion said, voice casual, eyes sharp, "before you do something foolish like try to swim back to the north." Jon followed because curiosity was safer than frustration, and because Dragonstone itself seemed to pull him toward its deeper places the way the sea pulled ships toward rocks. They descended into the mountain through tunnels narrower than the Dragonglass chambers. Here the air was hotter, thicker. Steam hissed from cracks in the stone, curling around their boots like pale snakes. The lantern in Tyrion's hand threw trembling light across walls carved with dragons and strange angular script. Viserion. Jon recognized the shapes without understanding why. They reached a door carved directly into black rock. No hinges visible, no handle, only a dragon relief with its mouth open in silent fury. Tyrion held up his lantern. "It's sealed most of the time," he said quietly. "Daenerys doesn't like people wandering in old Targaryen secrets. But you've become rather difficult to ignore." Jon's scars warmed. He pressed his palm against the stone. The door opened with a low grind that felt less like stone moving and more like something waking. Tyrion stared, lantern light wobbling. "Well," he murmured, "that's new." Inside was a chamber lit by a red glow seeping from thin cracks in the floor, lava's distant breath. Heat shimmered in the air, making the dragon-carved walls waver as if alive. Valyrian glyphs ran along the stone in bands, tight and deliberate, like chains made of language. At the chamber's center sat a stone pedestal. Upon it rested a horn. It was dark, ridged, polished, with bands of old metal wrapped around it. The horn looked like it had grown, not been crafted, like a dragon's tooth shaped into an instrument. Along its length, Valyrian script was etched deep enough to catch lantern light. Jon stared. The heat in his chest tightened violently, as if the horn had reached into him and gripped something. Tyrion approached cautiously, voice low. "I was told there are artifacts buried in Dragonstone's bones," he said. "Targaryen relics, dragon-binding lore. Most of it is myth, of course." His eyes flicked to Jon. "And then you arrived." Jon stepped closer to the pedestal. He could feel the horn's presence like a pressure against his skull. He did not reach for it yet. He looked at the glyphs around the chamber instead. The script seemed to shift when he stared too long, letters crawling into meaning. He did not translate them. He felt them. Chains, fire, blood, command. A word rose in his mind, sharp as a blade. Zaldrizes. His scars warmed. The red glow in the floor cracks seemed to brighten slightly, as if answering. Tyrion watched Jon's face carefully. "You can read it," he guessed. Jon swallowed. "I can't," he said, and hated the lie because it tasted too familiar. Tyrion didn't pee. Rest. He simply nodded as if storing the answer for later. "You don't have to," he said softly. "Some things speak without being read." Jon lifted his hand and touched the glyphs carved into the wall. Heat surged up his arm, stronger than any he had felt yet. His vision blurred. The chamber's red glow expanded, swallowing lantern light. For a heartbeat, Jon was not on Dragonstone. He stood in a city of black stone under a red sky. Towers rose like spears. Dragons filled the air, their wings beating slow, enormous, casting shadows that made men below look like insects. He heard voices speaking Valyrian, hard, commanding, musical. He saw a circle of robed men around a horn like the one on the pedestal. Their hands were cut, blood dripping into a bowl of flame. The flame rose, shaping itself into a dragon's head. Then the vision shifted again. Ice this time, a wall rising, not of stone but of frozen magic. He saw fire poured into its foundations, not to melt it, but to bind something beneath. He saw dragon flames striking ice, not destroying it, but writing spells into it. He saw a great shadow under the wall, coiled and sleeping. Jon gasped and tore his hand away. The chamber snapped back into focus. Tyrion grabbed his arm reflexively, steadying him. "Easy," Tyrion muttered, voice tight. Jon's breath came out as smoke. His heart hammered. His scars felt hot, as if they had been branded anew. "The wall," Jon rasped. Tyrion's eyes narrowed. "What about it?" Jon stared at the horn on the pedestal. The pressure in his skull had become a low hum. "It was made with fire," Jon said hoarsely. "Not just ice. Fire bound into it." Tyrion's face went very still. "That is deeply unpleasant," he said, because Tyrion Lannister could cloak fear in wit better than most men could cloak themselves in fur. Jon stepped closer to the horn. His hand hovered above it, trembling slightly. He could feel how easy it would be to pick it up, how easy it would be to bring it to his lips and blow, to see what answered. The thought made the fire in him surge with hungry curiosity. Tyrion's voice cut through, sharp. "Don't." Jon froze. Tyrion held his gaze. "Whatever that is," Tyrion said quietly, "it doesn't belong in the hands of a man who still believes he's only a man." Jon's throat tightened. He lowered his hand slowly. The horn remained on the pedestal, silent and patient. The chamber's heat shimmered. The glyphs watched. Jon backed away from the pedestal, every instinct screaming to either seize the horn or flee it. He did neither. He simply turned toward the door, breathing smoke into hot air, and walked out of the chamber as if leaving did not cost him something. Behind him, Tyrion lingered a heartbeat longer, lantern light trembling. When he finally followed, he shut the stone door, sealing the horn back into darkness. Jon climbed the steps out of the mountain's belly with his scars burning faintly, and one truth lodged in his mind like a nail. Dragon. Stone held old power, and old power had begun to recognize him. The raven arrived with winter on its wings. It fluttered into the war room and perched on the table edge as if the mountain's heat had not impressed it. Frost clung to its feathers in tiny crystals, already melting in Dragonstone's warmth. The bird cawed once, harsh, then hopped impatiently as if demanding someone take the weight from its leg. Missandei unfastened the scroll with careful fingers and passed it to Jon without ceremony. The wax seal was stark, the direwolf stamped deep. Jon's chest tightened before he even broke it. "Sansa." He unrolled the parchment and read. Her words were precise, controlled, carved from the same steel she wore in her eyes now. Winterfell held, she wrote. The North was rallying, slowly, grudgingly, as lords always did. The Karstarks were slippery. The Umbers were silent. The Glovers demanded proof. The Manderleys watched every shift like traders watching coin. And then her script tightened, the lines closer, the ink darker. At Eastwatch, strange reports. Dead things seen on the ice too far south, too close. Rangers missing. Wildlings uneasy. Tormund Giantsbane had sent word. The dead moved like an army now, not like scattered nightmares. The night itself felt heavier. The wall, Sansa wrote, felt wrong. Jon's scars warmed, as if the words had touched something under his skin. He tasted smoke. Davos leaned over Jon's shoulder, eyes scanning. "Eastwatch," Davos muttered. "If they're massing there." "They're testing," Jon said quietly. He looked up and the war room seemed suddenly smaller. "They're looking for a crack." Daenerys watched from the head of the table, expression controlled. Tyrion sat to her right, face thoughtful, fingers steepled. Grey Worm stood behind, posture rigid. The Unsullied ring seemed to tighten without moving. Daenerys's voice was calm. "This is your proof?" she asked. "A letter from your sister." Jon's jaw tightened. "It's not proof," he admitted. "It's warning." Daenerys's eyes narrowed. "Warnings are easy." Jon's voice hardened. "So is dying," he said. Tyrion coughed softly, stepping in before words became sparks. "It does suggest urgency," he said carefully, "and it suggests the North is not merely inventing threats to gain your attention. Daenerys did not look at Tyrion. "I need more," she said, gaze locked on Jon. "I need something my armies can see." Jon's mind moved fast, grim. "Then we show you," he said. Grey Worm's eyes narrowed. "How?" Jon stared at the map on the table. Black lines marking coast, the wall like a thin scar, the empty Wight beyond. He heard the dead in his memory. The wet scrape of feet, the click of frozen teeth, the silence before a scream. "We capture one," Jon said. The words landed hard. Missandei's breath caught. Tyrion's face tightened. Grey Worm's jaw clenched as if he had bitten something bitter. Daenerys's eyes sharpened. "Capture one," she repeated. "A Wight," Jon said. "Bring it south. Show it to anyone who doubts." His gaze held.
"The heir."
"If you want proof, that's proof." Daenerys stared at him, the mountain's heat shimmering in torchlight behind her. "You would bring death into my halls," she said softly. "Into my armies." Jon's voice was flat. "Death is coming whether we invite it or not." Davos swallowed hard. "That's madness," he muttered, though he did not sound certain. "And it might work." Tyrion leaned forward slowly, eyes bright with reluctant fascination. "A Wight," he murmured as if tasting the idea. "A living demonstration." He looked at Daenerys. "It would convince some. Not all, but it would convince those who matter," Jon said. "Those who hold armies. Those who hold cities." Daenerys's gaze stayed on Jon. "And you would go?" she said, not a question. Jon nodded once. Daenerys's expression tightened. "You would risk my dragons," she said. "I'd rather risk dragons than bury the world," Jon replied. The war room fell silent for a heartbeat. In that silence, Jon felt the cold pressure at the edge of his mind. A distant awareness, like an enemy shifting in darkness. And beneath that cold, he felt the fire in his chest coil. Ready. Daenerys stood very still. Then she spoke, voice controlled. "You will not take my dragons beyond the wall," she said. Jon's jaw tightened. "Then you'll lose the chance to save them," he said before he could stop himself. Grey Worm's spear but thudded once on stone. "Enough," he snapped. Daenerys lifted a hand, silencing him. Her eyes did not leave Jon. "You test me," she said softly. Jon held her gaze. "I'm trying to save you," he said, "whether you like it or not." Daenerys stared at him a long moment. Then she exhaled slowly. "Send your word," she said. "To your sister, to your wall. Prepare your men." Her gaze sharpened. "If we do this, it will be done my way." Jon's chest tightened. "Meaning?" Daenerys's mouth set. "Meaning you will not command my armies," she said. "You will not command my dragons." Her eyes narrowed. "And you will not forget that while you are in my fortress, you are under my protection." Protection. Another word that could be a cage. Jon nodded once anyway because time did not care about pride. He looked down at Sansa's letter again and felt the familiar ache of home and responsibility. "Come back," she had written, not as a plea but as a demand made of a man who had become a symbol. Jon rolled the parchment carefully and placed it on the table like an offering. "I'll bring you your proof," he said. Daenerys's gaze stayed on him, unreadable. And somewhere deep in Dragonstone's bones, heat stirred like laughter. That night, the island would not let him rest. Jon climbed to the parapets alone, drawn by the same pull that had taken him into Dragonstone's belly and into the dragon courtyard and into the chamber with the horn. The rain was light, a cold mist that clung to his hair and cheeks. The sea below was a black void, waves smashing against cliffs with a sound like distant war drums. Dragonstone breathed heat up through vents in the stone. A faint red glow pulsed from cracks like embers behind teeth. Jon stood with his hands on the wet stone and felt warmth under his palms, steady and alive. His breath came out thick with smoke. He did not know why it was thicker tonight. Perhaps the Dragonfire had fed him. Perhaps the mountain had. Perhaps the truth of his name, Aegon, had loosened something in him that had been locked tight. Lightning flashed behind low clouds, illuminating the world in brief, harsh slices. In one flash, Jon saw the dragon statues along the parapet edge. Black stone beasts frozen mid-roar. In another, he saw a darker shape above, perched on a ledge like a shadow made solid. Drogon. The dragon's eyes shone molten in the darkness. He watched Jon without moving, rain sliding off his scales. Smoke curled faintly from his nostrils, matching Jon's own smoke breath like an echo. Jon's scars warmed. He should have been afraid. Instead, he felt pulled, not to jump, not to flee, to reach. He turned his face up toward the dragon and felt, in his mind, that brush of presence again, huge, ancient, wordless. It pressed against him like heat against skin. Jon's head throbbed with it. For a heartbeat, the world blurred, and Jon saw the wall. Not the wall as men saw it, a cliff of ice and stone, but the wall as it had been made. Fire striking ice, dragon flame writing spells into frozen foundation. He saw men in robes speaking Valyrian. He saw blood dripping into snow and steaming. He saw a great shadow beneath the wall coil tighter, bound by runes and cold and heat at once. Then the vision shifted, and he saw blue eyes in the dark, an army of dead moving like water, endless, patient. At their front stood a figure in armor pale as moonlight, a crown of ice, a sword like frozen night. The Night King's gaze turned, and Jon felt it lock onto him through vision and distance as if the dead could smell his fire. Jon's breath hitched, smoke poured from his mouth. The heat in his chest surged, violent and defensive, and the torches along Dragonstone's walls, far below, flared in answer. Drogon rumbled low, a sound like thunder rolling through Jon's ribs. Jon pressed a hand to his chest over the scars. The skin was warm, too warm. The fire inside him felt like it wanted out, like it wanted to answer the Night King's cold gaze with flame. He lifted his hand slowly, palm up toward the rain, and willed the heat to settle. Didn't. A thin ribbon of flame sparked at his fingertips. Small, sudden, bright. Then died as quickly as it appeared, snuffed by. Then, Jon stared at his hand, heart hammering. He had not drawn that flame from a torch. It had come from him. Jon's throat went dry. He looked up at Drogon again. The dragon's eyes gleamed. Smoke curled thicker from his nostrils, as if he had smelled something new. Jon felt the dragon's presence press harder against his mind, and for an instant he understood the sensation not as threat but as question. "Are you fire?" Jon swallowed. "Yes," he whispered to the night, to the dragon, to whatever listened in the cracks of stone. "I am." The rain hissed against warm rock. Lightning flashed again, and for a heartbeat Jon saw his own reflection in a wet stone surface. Eyes too dark, face too thin, breath smoking like a furnace. He wondered, with sudden dread, whether the fire that brought him back had done more than resurrect him, whether it had claimed him. A distant roar rolled across the sea, Drogon's voice, deep and heavy, and Jon's scars answered with a pulse of heat. Somewhere far north, beyond the reach of ravens and queens, winter moved, and now winter had felt him. They argued logistics as if logistics could make a nightmare less hungry. Maps covered the war table, coastlines and rivers, the wall like a thin white scar, the empty lands beyond it drawn as blankness because men did not like to put too much ink into places that frightened them. Jon stood over the map with a dagger in hand, pointing to Eastwatch, then to the haunted forest, then farther north where nothing was marked but emptiness. "This is where they move," Jon said. "This is where we can find stragglers, small packs. If we go too far, we'll draw the whole army." Daenerys watched him with arms crossed, posture rigid. "And you expect my men to march into that?" she said, voice flat. "For a corpse." "For proof," Jon corrected. Grey Worm's gaze remained hard. "My men do not fear," he said, but Jon heard the tension beneath. Even fearless men did not like walking into stories. Davos leaned in, face grim. "Fear's not the problem," he muttered. "Freezing to death before you even find the bloody thing. That's the problem." Tyrion rubbed his temple with 2 fingers, as if trying to stave off a headache made of ice and politics. "We need a small party," he said. "Fast. Quiet." He glanced at Daenerys. "If we send too many, we risk too much." Daenerys's eyes narrowed. "And if we send too few, they die," she said. "And then we've gained nothing." Jon's dagger tapped the map once. "We need men who know the north," he said. "Men who fought the dead." His gaze flicked to Davos. "And we need a way to contain it." Missandei stepped forward with a scroll, voice calm. "There are iron cages used for dangerous animals," she said. "The Queen's ships have." "A cage," Davos muttered. "A bloody cage for a dead thing. What could go wrong?" Everything, Jon thought. Everything could go wrong. He forced his voice steady. "We trap it," he said. "We bring it south." He looked at Daenerys. "You'll see it. Your armies will see it. Then you'll choose." Daenerys stared at him, the mountain's heat shimmering in torchlight behind her. "Choose what?" she demanded. Jon held her eyes. "Whether you fight for a throne," he said, "or for the living." The words hung like a spark. Grey Worm's posture tightened. Tyrion's eyes widened slightly, then narrowed, as if irritated at Jon's bluntness and grateful for it at once. Daenerys did not flinch. "You speak as if those are different," she said softly. "If I rule, I protect." Jon's mouth tightened. "You can't protect Ash," he said. Silence stretched. At last Daenerys spoke, voice clipped. "Very well," she said. "We will do this." Her eyes flicked to Grey Worm. "I will not lose my Unsullied in your forest." Grey Worm's jaw tightened, but he nodded once. Daenerys's gaze returned to Jon. "You will go," she said, "with your men." She hesitated only a heartbeat, then added, "And I will not send my dragons." Jon felt the refusal like a cold splash. "If things turn bad," he began. "They won't," Daenerys cut in. "You said a small party. You said careful. Then be careful." Jon swallowed hard. He wanted to argue. He wanted to tell her she did not understand how quickly the dead could turn careful into slaughter. But he saw the tension in her shoulders, the possessiveness in her eyes when dragons were mentioned. She would not risk them on his word, not yet. Tyrion spoke quickly, smoothing edges. "We can still prepare," he said. "Ships ready to sail, men ready to receive. And if something goes wrong..." Daenerys's gaze sharpened. "If something goes wrong," she said, "then we will adapt. That is what rulers do." Davos snorted softly. "Aye," he muttered, "and what men do is die." Jon ignored him because Davos was not wrong and because wrongness did not help. He looked down at the map again and felt the cold pressure beyond it, beyond ink and stone, waiting in the north. He felt the fire in his chest coil tighter, eager and hungry, as if it liked the thought of going back toward the wall. He realized with a sick twist that some part of him did not fear the dead. Some part of him wanted to meet them. He pressed the dagger tip into the map where Eastwatch sat and held it there until the parchment dimpled. "Then we go," Jon said. Daenerys stared at him across the table, her face lit by low torchlight, and Jon could not tell whether she saw him as ally, rival, or weapon. Perhaps all three. Perhaps that was what kings were. Dawn came with wind and witnesses. Jon heard footsteps behind him on the cliff path before he saw anyone. He did not turn at first. He stood on the stone terrace where the dragons liked to gather, a broad shelf carved near the mountain's edge, torches burning in iron brackets, their flames snapping in the wind. The sea below was black and angry, but the sky had begun to pale at its edges, bruised purple turning slowly toward gray. He felt them before he saw them. Three presences, enormous and hot. Drogon landed first, wings folding with a sound like sails snapping. Rhaegal followed, green scales catching the faint dawn light, chains long since removed here because Daenerys did not chain them on open stone. Viserion glided down last, pale gold against gray sky, landing with a heavy grace that made the terrace tremble. Jon stood still, hands at his sides. He felt the fire in him coil tight, not aggressive, but alert. like a living thing waking to familiar voices. Behind him, Daenerys approached with Tyrion, Missandei, Grey Worm, and a small ring of Unsullied. Their boots scraped stone, their breath fogged in the cold air. Daenerys stopped at the terrace edge and stared at the 3 dragons gathered together as if she had never seen them before. "They came," she said softly. Jon did not look back. His gaze was on Drogon's molten eyes. "They were already here," he said. Daenerys's voice tightened. "They don't gather like this," she said. "Not without me." Jon's breath smoked. "Then maybe they're gathering for something else," he said, and the words tasted dangerous. Grey Worm shifted, spear tightening in his grip. Tyrion's face looked pale with astonishment. Missandei's eyes were wide, but her posture remained calm, as if she were watching a storm you could not stop and should not insult. Drogon stepped closer, claws scraping stone. The dragon's head lowered slightly, smoke curling from his nostrils. Rhaegal rumbled, a low sound that vibrated through the terrace. Viserion's pale head tilted, studying Jon with unsettling focus. Jon felt their warmth press against his skin like sun. He lifted his hand slowly, palm open. The torches along the terrace flared, leaning toward him. The wind seemed to hesitate for a heartbeat, as if listening. Jon did not speak Valyrian out loud. He did not want Daenerys hearing the language in his mouth and deciding that meant ownership. He simply reached inward and let the heat in him rise. Steady, controlled, present. He felt the dragons respond, not by obeying like trained animals, by acknowledging like great powers recognizing their own. Drogon lowered his head another fraction. Rhaegal did the same, chains of muscle shifting under green scales. Viserion's nostrils flared, then his head dipped as well, slow and deliberate. 3 dragons, heads lowered toward Jon Snow. The Unsullied went still. Grey Worm's posture tightened like a drawn bowstring. Tyrion's mouth parted, disbelief making him look younger. Missandei's hand rose slowly to her chest, as if she needed to steady her heartbeat with her palm. Daenerys did not move. Jon could feel her gaze on the back of his skull like a blade pressed lightly against flesh. He kept his eyes on the dragons. His scars warmed. Heat shimmered under his skin like coals breathing. He felt the dragon's minds brush his huge, ancient, not human. Not words. Instinct. Memory. Sky and fire and hunger. And beneath that, something else. Older than these dragons, older than this island. A thread of command woven into blood. Jon swallowed, throat tight. He did not want to command them. He wanted them to live. He wanted to use them against ice, not to become the kind of man Valyria had been built to serve. But the dragons did not care about his morality. They cared about what he was. Daenerys' voice cut through, tight and dangerous. "Stop," she said. Jon lowered his hand slowly. The torches steadied. The wind resumed its restless bite. The dragons' heads lifted, reluctantly, but their eyes remained on Jon, heavy, intent, as if they were waiting for him to speak again. Daenerys stepped forward, boots scraping stone, stopping where the heat of the dragons could kiss her skin. She stared at Jon as if he were a stranger in her bed. "You did something," she said softly. Jon turned then, finally, and faced her. His breath smoked. His hair was damp with mist. His scars burned faintly under skin. "I didn't call them," he said. "I didn't try." Daenerys' eyes narrowed. "And yet they answered." Jon met her gaze. "Maybe they're answering what I am," he said. And the honesty in it was dangerous because it offered her no comfort. Daenerys' mouth tightened. "You are in my home," she said. "Under my dragons." Jon's voice was quiet. "Maybe not," he said. The words hung between them like a spark over dry grass. Grey Worm took a step forward, rage barely leashed. Tyrion lifted a hand instinctively as if to slow him. Missandei's gaze flicked to Daenerys, wary. Daenerys did not look away from Jon. "If you are what Samwell Tarly says," she said, "then the realm will tear itself apart over you." Jon's jaw tightened. "Then we don't let it," he said. "We fight the dead first." Daenerys's eyes flashed. "And if the realm chooses you?" she demanded. Jon felt the fire in his chest surge, not in pride, but in exhaustion. "Then the realm is stupid," he said flatly, "because I don't want it." Daenerys stared at him a long moment. In that stare, Jon saw her fear, her anger, her ambition, and beneath it all, something like the weight he carried too. The terror of being replaced by another story. The dragons shifted behind Jon, massive shadows against dawn light. Drogon rumbled low, a sound like thunder, as if reminding them both that dragons did not care about human arguments. Daenerys exhaled slowly, forcing herself calm. "You will go north," she said, voice controlled. "You will bring me your proof, and when I see it, I will to whether to bring my dragons." Jon nodded once, because it was as close to agreement as they could get without burning each other alive. Daenerys's gaze lingered on the dragons behind Jon, then returned to him. "And you," she said softly, "will not touch them again without my command." Jon's mouth tightened. He did not promise. He simply held her gaze until she looked away. The dawn brightened. The sea roared below. The dragons watched, patient and awake. And Jon Snow, Aegon Targaryen, fire-returned king, unwilling Dragonlord, understood that the next step north would not just be a march into winter. It would be a march into the place where ice had learned to fear fire, and where fire would be tested for what it truly was.